Oh, it's been a minute since I've done a proper Splatoon weapons video, huh? Okay, well it was not that long ago, but when you take into account my horrid upload schedule, it certainly feels like it. Look, I'm a busy person. I have slimes to alphabetize. Also, a couple weeks ago I got hit by a comically oversized Gmod hammer, and I've been reconstructing my body ever since. Either way, now that I'm no longer a pile of mush and my slime has been alphabetized, I thought it was time to do an inverse of a previous video concept, where I theorized how someone might implement Splatoon weapons into TF2. I thought that was a fun video, even if it didn't do super well. Though it's only natural I did it again. However, this time, taking TF2 weapons and redesigning them to work in Splatoon. As for rules, the weapon concept and mechanics must be at least semi-realistic for Splatoon, while somehow retaining what makes them unique to TF2. Essentially, I want to redesign these weapons to work in Splatoon, while keeping their TF2 inspirations somewhat intact, within reason. Be a little insane if you could just start rocket jumping around. I mean, you can walk across most maps in less than a minute. I don't think we need rocket-propelled squids and octopi flying down like icky meteors of aquatic destruction. Besides that, just kind of have fun with them. Editing guarding here. Also, sorry if background footage is mostly Splatoon. I accidentally formatted my SSD recently. Ever since then, my computer has been noticeably worse in terms of performance. Like, look at this. This wasn't just the recording. It was the game. And screw you, you pre-built. I'm trying my best, damn it. When it came to deciding what TF2 weapons I'd put into Splatoon, I wasn't very judicious. I basically just went, wow, that weapon sure looks neat, yoink, and then ran like hell. Which is why we're starting with the Soda Popper, because the scout I ran into just so happened to have one. The Soda Popper is a scout unlock that allows him to build up a height meter through damaging opponents, where upon filling and activating, it allows him to jump up to 5 times mid-air. Of course, mechanic-wise, we will have to do some tweaking. But before that, we kinda need to give this thing an aesthetic overall. For TF2, this thing looks pretty decent, but for Splatoon, not so much. Yeah, not exactly fitting. So with a few dabs of paint and a goat sacrifice, we have the Soda Soaker. The new look is mostly based off Splatoon's Splattershot, mixed with some 50-gal inspiration, and topped off with us replacing the Toxic Sludge Scout drinks with Splatoon branded Toxic Sludge. I mean, it has to be with all the buffs it gives you, right? Like, there's no way. Regardless, when it comes to stats, I kept this one pretty straightforward. With extra low range, I mean, you don't often see scouts shooting people across the map with a scattergun after all. Okay, well, you might, but the chance of a single pellet hitting anyone is as low as winning the lottery after your crush just confessed their love for you and then gifted you an adorable kitten. It's not very likely. The range would be somewhere in between the Sploosh and the Junior. However, the spread itself would be closer to the Sploosh, with a wider spread akin to what you'd expect from a typical scattergun. On that same note, it would have crazy high damage, with a good hit taking down most opponents, if you're in range. And to balance that all out, it has pretty low firing speed. I mean, it's a shotgun, it only makes sense. Now, the hard part. Truth be told, I don't think every weapon needs something weird or special about it. However, this is all hypothetical, so back it.
Let's have some fun.
Obviously, adding the Soda Popper's ability to basically levitate off the ground for a bit isn't gonna slide. On camping as bad as is, imagine if you had a horde of flying squids. So I was thinking something that gets across the same idea, but isn't as broken, would be a good compromise. Essentially, we want to give the player a boost of mobility for damaging or spotting opponents. For my first thought, I was thinking after doing a certain amount of damage, the player would be able to form a grounded squid surge, or even consecutive squid rolls. I know you can kinda spam squid rolls, but mostly just back and forth. I'm sure you could probably do them back to back in one direction if you're good, but this ability would be a lot more reliable. I don't hate this idea, though I think it could be kind of awkward to implement, but at the very least it wouldn't be overpowered since you'd still need to charge a meter of sorts similar to the actual Soda Popper. Perhaps 1 kill equals 1 charge, and you can hold up to 2 to 3 charges. Though now that I'm saying that out loud, that kinda contradicts my spawn camping comment, but I still think that a bunch of floaty jumps like the Soda Popper would still be more powerful. At least with this, you'd have to choose which ability you want to use, and on top of that, the Squid Surge would be grounded, which would make it pretty situational, and therefore hopefully not super broken, though I'm sure you could probably use that against some janky spots. Well, as usual, let me know what you all think and how you'd modify or change it. And while you're down there, yeah, might as well do the YouTube thing and like, comment, and subscribe.
God, feels dirtier every time.
As for Kid, I'm gonna be kind of brain dead on this one, giving him Fizzy Bomb for a sub and Tactical for a special. I mean, it's Scout TF2, and it's based on the Soda Popper. It needs soda. Okay, next weapon. Alright. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Talking now and talking slow. Guess we'll pick one, here we go. Out, Y, O, and... I don't remember the rhyme. Okay, you know what, I'll pick this one. The Detonator is a pyro secondary and is often considered the lesser of their flare guns. However, it's always been my favorite, as it works in a bit of an odd manner, and I've always been a bit of a sucker for weird weapons. While you can still use this one like a typical flare gun, it's so weak compared to their other offerings, there's no real point, as it has a 25% damage penalty, but also has less self-damage alongside its unique mechanic. You see, when the flare becomes airborne, the player is able to alt-click, causing the flare to explode in a small radius, damaging and igniting nearby players. Alongside that, the lesser self-damage allows Pyro to do flare jumps, which might seem pretty pitiful at first, but in the right hands can be quite a decent extra tool. With that, I got to designing their Splatoon counterpart, which gives us the Explosher.
Hey, editing garden again. So, the Explosher, huh? Yeah, that's a dreadful name. That is not the final name. Please, somebody help me come up with another one. I don't know what I was thinking, naming something the X-Slosher when there's an item called the Explosher in the game. In fact, I literally call this item the Explosher the entire time because my brain auto-corrected it to the actual Splatoon item. So apologies. And also sorry for this awful audio quality. My mic literally died after I finished recording this video.
Which would be a kind of blaster, just a much tinier and weird one. As for the stats, this blaster would have amazing range, even surpassing the range blaster, which, you know, has the word range in it. However, unlike the range blaster, this thing really isn't packing much of a punch, with really low impact, essentially low damage. Not exactly unusable, but definitely the weakest out of all the blasters. But it makes up for it due to its decent fire rate, for a blaster, and unique mechanic. Unlike the Soda Soaker, for this one, I more or less just plucked the detonator's mechanic and straight up put it in Splatoon. Having it so the player shoots at a capsule filled with ink that does okay damage upon hitting an enemy. However, just like the detonator, once the projectile becomes airborne, you're able to click once more to explode the capsule. Though as a small bonus, unlike the detonator, the longer the capsule stays in the air, the bigger the explosion will be, starting at about the size of a rolled torpedo and capping at about the size of a suction bomb explosion, with its damage increasing as well, but still staying relatively weak compared to blasters. I think this would be a really cool weapon, and due to you needing to explode any airborne capsules before you can launch another, you can't really spam it that much, at least not without it being super weak or leaving yourself wide open. So it kind of balances itself out. As for the kit, due to its unique mechanic, I think giving it a more utility-based one makes the most sense. I was initially thinking point sensor and inkvac, as it acts as a nice defensive special alongside being a half nod to Pyro's air blast. Though that said, I wouldn't be against giving it a normal bomb sub, as even with the bigger explosion stuff, I still think the inking abilities still be quite damning. But let me know what you all think. I'm not really sure what medic option I want to do. Hey medic, what weapon of yours should I add to TF2?
You are trying my patience!
Yeah, you're right. The Ubersaw does look like it'd make for a great Splatana. The Ubersaw is a medic melee that swings 20% slower, however every successful hit on an enemy gives him 25% towards his Uber. For non-TF2 players, just think ink armor but about 1,000 times more powerful. With that out of the way, introducing the Sawtana. Really? Satana? That's the best name I could have thought of? As for the design, I'm a bit up in the air with this one. I like the form factor, but something about it just feels a tad off. Maybe the colors. Maybe there's too much red. Regardless, for stats, I would think this would have a pretty low range, at least compared to other Splatanas. However, would make up for it with high damage. I'm thinking somewhere between Stamper and the Decapitator. I've never actually said Decapitator out loud before. I don't like it. It feels weird in my tongue. What the f is this script? With relatively high damage but low as hell range, you'd probably expect it to have pretty fast handling to make up for that. Well, you're wrong. This is due to its special mechanic being such a big upside that even more handicaps are probably needed to keep it in check. Probably. I might have actually put in too many handicaps for this. For this Splatana, upon killing an enemy, you'd then be able to aim the gun and use the syringe nozzle to snipe your foes. I know, it's bizarre, potentially overpowered, and stupid, but god damn it, it'd be cool as hell. Plus, if it's that powerful, you can always just say you need to kill at least like 2 enemies to charge it up. Or even better, that you need to kill someone with a slash attack to charge it properly. That way it would better replicate how you need to hit an enemy with the Ubersaw in TF2 to gain that extra Uber charge. Plus, it would still require like 2 hits to kill from full HP, or at least a hit in half. So honestly, with all that out there, I don't think this would be too overpowered, even when compared to other Splatanas. Mostly due to its slow speed being such a big downside in terms of using mobility. So this would essentially just boil down to being a fun pick. Or maybe that idea is just dumb. But like, come on, it'd be cool. However, for the lame people, I suppose we could just make it so every kill gives you extra points towards your special. But you know, inking the floor kind of does the same thing, so... What do you think, low-res medic PMG?
I'm going to saw through your bones!
I don't have any of those.
Boo!
Okay, then you can go now. Sorry about that. I guess just choose whichever mechanic you prefer, but I'm going with the first. While this would be a really high damaging weapon, it is going to be incredibly slow, and would still likely need a lot of help to really get going. So I was thinking Curling Bomb and Big Bubbler. Curling Bomb would be a decent option for extra inking power, though I am aware Burst and Splat Bomb would be a lot better, but I also feel as though they might be too good of a combo for this weapon. And then Big Bubbler as both a supportive option, as a nod to Medic's inspiration here, and defensive option when need be, though I know it's a lot more situational than other specials. But as always, names and kits are up for edits.
Well done!
Milk is good. I mean, not actually sure what I could do with that. That's just a jar of milk, in quotes. If you know, you know. Jokes aside, the Mad Milk is a scout secondary that can be tossed at enemies, and upon coating them, allows attackers to gain small portions of HP off damaging said soaked opponents. And to be honest, this is probably one of the goofier picks I could have gone with, especially since I based my Splatoon variant off the mutated milk. A weapon reskin that sees a mutated bread monster trapped inside a jar. And in fact, this reskin is the only reason I chose to do this one. Look, the idea of just having a little buddy inside of your weapon, it just spoke to me. Granted, this bread monster is less than enthused unless it's biting off a face. But for our weapon, let's just say they're having a good time. With that, introducing the Octocroc. Look, I know it's a joke, but I like this name, alright? Look, we even have a little buddy now. And don't worry, like I said,
Loving it.
Octocroc is probably the most straightforward weapon of this video, as it would be a pretty tame slosher in terms of stats, having pretty high range, with it being a little less than the Explosher, but a decent bit more than the average slosher. Though it would also have low damage, yet to make up for it has pretty decent handling speed. Now the mechanic. Well, when it comes down to it, sloshers' unique mechanics tend to just be how they deploy their ink, as most of them have unique arcs and projectiles, which heavily change how they play. I was thinking for the Octocroc, perhaps it would have an arching slosh, with a trailing effect that is thicker at the end of the shot, but thins out as it goes along. This would excel at long-range shots like the Explosher, but just like it would also struggle with close-range encounters, which sucks for it, but a well-rounded kit should help cover its shortcomings. That aside, actual Mad Milk is still a utility item, not really a weapon. I mean, it doesn't do damage, at least not inherently, yet instead offers you possible healing if you can hit your enemy. However, healing in Splatoon isn't really a thing, at least not in the same way as TF2. Healing in Splatoon isn't really a big deal, especially since hiding in some ink for a few seconds, it does that by default. So having it as a special bonus almost seems useless, or actually maybe even too powerful. It's kind of hard to tell because no weapons act like that. Actually, now that I say it out loud, I'm 100% positive there's good applications at higher play, but I almost just dislike the idea outright. For TF2, I think the concept works fine, if not pretty decently, but for Splatoon, I just don't love it. So instead of having the healing potential of the Mad Milk, Octorock would see the Octarian latch onto enemies upon a direct hit, dealing additional damage and slowing the target by a little bit. The extra damage wouldn't be anything too crazy. I'm thinking anywhere between like an extra 20 to 30 damage tops. But if anything, this works as a way for teammates to then be able to capitalize on that slowed target, giving this weapon that utility that the Mad Milk has, just in its own special way. Oh wait, I basically just made a utility Explosher.
Damn.
Lastly, I was thinking it would be neat to allow your teammates to shoot off the Octarian, which in its own right would be a big hassle, but a nice way to not make it entirely unfun to play against. Also thinking extra kits would have different little buddies in them, just as like a cute little detail. As for this first kit, I think this would be a great weapon for two close range burst options. In one case, literally. I think Burst 1 would be an amazing sub for this, helping to cover its lack of close range fighting power and mediocre inking ability compared to other sloshers. Then for the special, I think Kraken would be a really fun one. Though I was originally going to give it Wave Breaker, mostly so I can make like an ice cream joke, but the Wave Breaker isn't even based on an ice cream cone. If you squint at it in the right light, it kind of slightly looks like an ice cream cone. But 6 times out of 10, Kraken Royale is going to be the better special in most situations, especially for a weapon that really needs all the help it can get in a close range encounter. That said, I do think this weapon would work well with a lot of different kits. In fact, I was tempted to do a second kit for it right now, though this video is already running kinda long. More so when you consider all the gags I did for it compared to other videos. So, we'll leave it there for now.
Yeah,
Wait, why the f are you still here?
I'm tying.
What are you on about? There's a door right there, just leave already. Oh, wait, where am I?
Uh-oh, all right. This is actually really bad.
Before I go, I would like to thank my YouTube member, the one and only, Best Pro Gaming, and of course alongside that, my $15 patrons, Psyche Eclipse and Benjamin Baker. Okay, with that, I gotta figure out what the hell is going on here, so I'll see you next time. Bye.